Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for making time for the talk point tonight, where we shall be taking a look at just the political scene and what has been going down for the better part of this week. And I have my panel on standby just to give you a breakdown of some of the issues and some of the leaders and what they have been talking about all around the week. I'm joined by Moses Oburu, a political analyst on my immediate right. Thank you very much for making time. And on my farthest right, Ruth Ambogo, a political aspirant and a lawyer. Thank you very much for making time. Thank you. As we begin, the talk point really, what has been making headlines across the country is the issue to do with the Kenya-Somali maritime border rule. We saw the ruling at the International Court of Justice on Tuesday. I mean, President Uhuru Kenyatta says not an inch. I'll begin with you, Moses. I mean, this causes a lot of diplomatic tension between us and Somali.
Thank you for having me here, and good morning, good evening.
Yes.
I will speak as a patriotic citizen of this country and say that first of all, Kenya should have participated in in that case fully. They should have been there at every stage of it, and because this is an international stage, and some of those decisions can be very impactful on our country moving forward. You understand that that area, the area in dispute, has a lot of resources: gas, oil, aquatic resources, fish, etc. Therefore, it is a serious area of interest, and any country will want to hold on it, and any country will want not to cede ground of an inch of it. You know, Somalia has not been a stable country since the ouster of Siad Barre in the early 90s. That now means that the country is not stable. When there's absence of stable government and structures, decisions that are made sometimes border on selfish individual interests who are key players in those countries. And there is talk with some inches of evidence that Somali nationalities, and to an extent the state, has sold out blocks of that area to very powerful international players. Some of these international players could be stronger than Kenya. And therefore, if the ICJ has made a pronouncement that is not positive and that does not side with the Kenyan interest, then it opens another front that may be very difficult for Kenya to surmount. I'm told there are powerful forces, that some members of the G20, some members of the G7 whose interests are in those blocks now. So when Somali now the real owners of those things come on to the fore, Kenya will now not be dealing with Somali. It will be dealing with the actual owners, who largely will be powerful than Kenya. Now, in the international circles and in the international laws and diplomatic circles, there are countries that have the final say on what happens in the globe. They have war at their disposal. And in these countries, I know there's the permanent members of the UN, the US, the China, Britain, you know them. So these countries are not jokes. So if they're interested in those blocks, then you can already see what faces Kenya. Yes. Because it will not be a walk in the park. We may try to show our might that we are more powerful. We have a more organized military than the Somali as a country. But now look at what I've said, what I've told you. Look at the owners we will be facing. Possibly we'll be facing a more mightier military power than Kenya. So what does that leave Kenya? We are in for more problems.
Yes, and some netizens online, actual mixed reactions, I'd say. and others have called the ICJ ruling as biased, and they didn't take into consideration how Kenya has been able to keep this section of the Indian Ocean for a very long time. And till today morning, the hashtag "Someone Tell Somali" has been trending. I mean, what are your thoughts, really?
The concerns about biasness are well-founded, in the sense that when you look at the composition of the judges at the ICJ, there was concern that, and Kenya raised it up, that one of the judges was actually a Somali, yes, you know, of Somali descent, who was actually pretty much from Somalia, I think so, a Somali judge on the bench. And that is what would lead to people, you know, claiming that the decision could have been biased to some extent. But for me, I think what comes to question is territorial integrity of any country is something that must be taken very seriously by the government of the day. If I'll take you back to the days when we had this conversation about Migingo, when the conversation about Migingo started, and Uganda was claiming that, you know, a part of Migingo belongs to Uganda. And at that particular time, had the president, and also just back to another more previous example, when Uganda was claiming that, you know, half of Kenya up until Nakuru belongs to Uganda, you know. And when you look at how the strong stance that the presidents who are holding office at that particular time took in securing, you know, our territorial integrity, that alone should tell you how seriously such an issue should be taken. And, you know, Kenya unfortunately has neighbors that we do not have the luxury of having neighbors who are what I would call reserved neighbors. We have neighbors that are very opportunistic. These are people who, at the mere suggestion that there's an opportunity to take over a part of Kenya, they would grab that opportunity, you know, at all costs. So I think this decision exposes Kenya as a country to future risks. It exposes us to the risk of one day, for instance, Ethiopia waking up and saying we are claiming a part of the northern part of Kenya. It exposes us to the risk of Uganda now realizing that, you know, if Kenya can easily cede particular areas of its country, then we can as well revive the conversations about Lake Victoria being entirely Ugandan soil, you know. And that leaves us at a very vulnerable position as a country.
So we have very limited options here.
We do have limited options, and I mean I've heard of people talking about us, the president, the parliament declaring, you know, a state of emergency, declaring war, and basically invoking war against Somalia. But for me, my concerns would be, would we be able to sustain that kind of war? I'm not questioning our ability, and not questioning our military's capacity to be able to sustain a war, but I'm just asking myself that after years of trying to sustain peace between Kenya and Somalia, and how the, you know, the attacks we used to face, especially from the terrorist factions of Somalia, the Al-Shabaab from Somalia, I mean, the de-escalation of that kind of terrorist activity within Kenya, it has de-escalated for some time. So I do not know, I do not see, I mean, I foresee a future where if we are to pursue war, then we might as well find ourselves in a situation where we reactivate, you know, this terrorist activity, and it might not play well for the country. And now, especially also going into an election period, it's also something that we should, you know, consider. The other things that come to question also, because some of the conversations around this whole debate are Kenya's intentions or wishes to withdraw from, you know, ICJ as an institution, and there has been conversation around what is the capacity, AU's capacity, or basically continentally, what legal mechanisms do we have in place continentally to resolve such issues in the future. We've had robust conversation within, I mean, that involves other African countries who have come forth and have declared their intentions or wishes to withdraw from even the ICC Charter. You know, some of them have declared their intentions to withdraw from ICJ, and many of them are, the conversation is now moving towards African countries revamping their legal and dispute resolution mechanisms, processes within AU and other of those regional forums, so that when such disputes arise, we can be able to find local or African solutions to African problems.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And you know, Kenya got the non-permanent position at the United Nations Security Council back in January. I mean, how will this position help us? Does it play to our advantage as of now?
It would have played depending on how we handle this from the word go. You know, we like Ruth has just said, we should have gone there and protested. You see, we are making post-judgment protests. How this can impact the judgment is another story. Like, just go back to what I told you. Those blocks are already sold out. And those blocks, if you later on because I already know some of the countries involved are more powerful than Kenya. So even the option of war is not tenable for us, because if you find Turkey, you find China, you get, you know, all this power, you get British interest there, you get American interest. How will you face it? They first of all they fund our military. Yes, yes. They give us ammunition. So how will you? Yeah, how will you fight them? I mean, it's not an option. The only option was for us to have stuck there and made our protestations and made sure that we were part of that case from the word go. So the other details, I think, let's wait and see. But it's also very interesting because we are at the verge of our succession. So this current president may not have much stake. Maybe as he says, let me leave it to whoever comes into office. So that was a very interesting scenario. So I think we're in for much more than we think as a country.
Yes, even as you know, President Uhuru Kenyatta says he will leave the country to whoever will be coming in just the way he was handed over to. So we shall be looking out for exactly how things will evolve as from here. But we want to shift our focus to the western part of this country and how the Mulembe Nation, a section of the leaders, have now come out to say that you know, they are not alienating any political candidate and they are looking for unity. And they actually even appointed Dr. Francis Atwoli as the region's spokesperson to represent their interests. Would you say Dr. Atwoli was the right pick, though? Because we have other prominent leaders. I mean, we have Governor Wycliffe Oparanyam, we have Dr. Mohisa Kitui. I mean, why Atwoli?
I mean, what happens within political mobilization is usually he who has the famous phrase, he who pays the piper calls the tune. That it's all about what are you bringing to the table. In the first place, we must understand who organized this meeting, first of all. You know, who is the person that brought these leaders together. Whoever initiates an idea within the political space, whoever initiates an idea in a political lobby group, in any political setup, in one way or another, whoever takes the leadership initiative within any setting is automatically usually crowned the leader of whatever movement it is, whether it's a movement, whether it's a lobby group, whether it's an organization within a political party. So for politics, it's usually whoever takes the initiative most times tends to be the leader, because now you're the one who is trusted, you're the one who knows the vision of the group that you're bringing together. So I think automatically looking at Atwoli's financial strength, looking at also and sometimes when people are picking out who would be the voice for a movement or who would be the voice for a particular political formation, they don't necessarily look at who is the cleanest, who is the smartest of them all, who has the cleanest record amongst them all. Many times they tend to look at who is the individual that, if given a platform to speak, people will actually listen or pay attention, you know. And many times they also land on very controversial characters, because in politics it appears that the more controversial you are, the more people want to pay attention to, the more you can attract attention from those who support you and those who, you know, those who oppose you, you know. So character and personality plays a big role in determining who is usually picked to be the front face for some of these things. Even if you look at at how Mount Kenya landed on, for instance, Martha Karua as their spokesperson, you'd think of it from the angle that Martha Karua is known to be a tough-talking lady, given her history and how she has fought within the political space. She seems to be the person who, when push comes to shove and people are negotiating, that people would trust that at the negotiating table, she would actually push for the best interests of the group that she's representing. So I'm thinking at that particular point, they were also thinking that, if we ever get to a point where we are bargaining with other people from different fronts, then this is the person that we can trust to push for our agenda best. But also just to comment on what generally the meeting taking place and some of the things that they claim that they want to push for. I am very happy that that is happening, because it is one thing that I have always talked about. I have spoken about it since, ever since, in fact, even the last time we came here, we were here, the last show I attended here, I mentioned that I would want to see Western leaders coming together, and saying that, look, these are some of the demands we are putting in place. These are we want to bargain, and this is what we are asking for as a people. I was very saddened by the fact that there was some silence coming from the Western region. Nobody seemed to come up and say that, look, as a region, we also want to bargain. Whether we are bargaining with, even if we have decided that this is we have already made up our mind as to who we are bargaining with, but at least let us have that conversation about bargaining. I'm happy that this has happened, because now you can see that even people who are automatically supporting, people who had already registered their support for Musalia Mudavadi, and how unhappy they are with this new formation, and claiming that this formation does not necessarily represent the ideas and ideals of the Luhya community. I'm happy that there is now that conversation, because even now they themselves will now have to get to the conversation table, where they can say now what are some of our interests. That even though we are supporting this, the Musalia Mudavadi that we are supporting, and we are opposed to this team that is now registering their support for Raila Odinga, what are we also bargaining for? Let there be a conversation about interests, what are we bargaining for, so that it is not blind support. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that if you support your own, then automatically your interests will be taken care of. You've heard of people even from the central region that has produced presidents all along. You still hear of regions where they say that even within the central Kenya region, Mount Kenya region itself, that has produced presidents all these years, they don't have water, they don't have electricity, they don't have roads. So it is not an automatic guarantee that if we support one of our own, that our interests will be taken care of. If you do not present to the bargaining table what you want, you might as well have a presidency that will deliver absolutely nothing to you as a people.
Yes, yes. And we want to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'll get to your Bura, and we'll talk about, just how there are likely to be 3 frontiers for the for presidency from that region: Musalia Mudavadi, Dr. Mohisa Kitui, Moses Wetangula. But the leaders now say that we shall be rallying behind the handshake, and some of the leaders or the front runners who have been rallying for that handshake. So we take that quick break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Talk Point, and we are into issues to do with the Mulembe Nation politics and how Dr. Francis Atwoli was appointed as the region's spokesperson by a section of leaders. And Mr. Oburu, that region is fronting about 3 candidates, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, Dr. Mohisa Kitui, but none of them was present in that meeting. Does it sound, sort of ironic? We are talking about Luhya unity and how we want the presidency, but none of the people who have declared their bid are in the meeting when we are talking about these issues.
First of all, let me from the outset say something about how Kenyan politics is mobilized, and then bring in the Luhya, the issue of the Luhya unity. Kenyan politics is mobilized around tribes. Tribes are our basic mobilization units for our politics. And it is not sinful, and it's because that's what we have. The main thing in Kenya is the presidency, because I will differ with Ruth, because I travel a lot in the central region, and in the central region, tarmac looks for tarmac. One tarmac road leads to the other. This electricity, unlike in the Western circuit, where electricity hops and jumps. It comes when it sees a Mabati house that is not, it jumps looking for a concrete, a permanent house, unlike the central where it just goes. It loves everywhere. It goes to every home. Having said that, permit me to say that I think the lawyer community has not known what political power means. Because historically, in 1992, the Kikuyu, I think, had not known what power means. And therefore, Matiba stood the real chances of winning against Kanu. But you know, Kibaki, if you know, that Kibaki came in to make sure that Matiba did not win the presidency. And that was at the behest of political maneuvering from Moi. And that happened. And so that's how Matiba became number 2, Kibaki became number 3. Fast forward. In 2002, Kikuyus had 2 candidates, leading candidates, in the person of Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta. And it's interesting because you'll see Uhuru's uncle, Mohoho George, was Kibaki's main man in his campaign. And his nephew Uhuru was running. So did you see, they never hit at each other. What did you see? They knew this thing we scheme around it to get it. And they were sure that if Uhuru gets, the community would be there. If Kibaki got, which happened, Uhuru got it. What happened? Kibaki got it 10 years later, in 2007, what did Uhuru do? He said he's not running. The first time in Kenya, the leader of official opposition never ran for presidency. Because they know what the interest of the community is. So Uhuru supported Kibaki. What did you see in 2013? Kibaki had prepared the space for Uhuru to take over. So that meant that this community has had uninterrupted stay in power for 20 years. That means a lot for a region. It means a lot because your sons and daughters, you know, you don't have to be a president. You don't have even to know the president. But the mere fact, the way Kenyan politics is, the mere fact that you are from that community, you get targeted entry into certain spaces that you would not have gotten in. Let's come back to the Mulembe nation. It is true that there's Mukisa Kitui, there's Wetangula and Musalia Mudavadi running for president. I'm speaking as a neighbor, Luo. Now, look at the profile of these individuals. One has been a minister for 19 years, has been a vice president, and has been a deputy prime minister, and has run for president. What do you, I mean, that is called a bio. It is a solid bio because that shows experience in governance, in government. Now, to get someone, it takes a lifetime to get someone in the stage of Mudavadi. Now, the man is loved across the country. If you go to Kikuyu land, they don't have an issue. If you go to, you know, from an outsider's view, I think the man was, but you see, these guys still do not understand how politics is seduced. They are busy serving interest from elsewhere. So this is a community. This is a community whose agenda, I think, for their people is neither here nor there, neither here nor there. So that means these guys, even if whoever they are supporting gets to the presidency, they will only be settling for crumbs because they don't have a solid backyard. They don't have. They appear to not to know what they do. So it is rivalry, and rivalry among a community does not lead anybody. So I can tell you, they miss it this time. It will take them another 50 years to get characters and persons who are able to take a stab at the presidency. So I only wish them the best as they negotiate, as they try to champion their interest. May God help them.
Yes. Ruth, I'd love to bring you in here. Mr. Obura said something important about, you know, how Uhuru and Raila, sorry, and Kibaki were, you know, having these scheme plans. I mean, Mulembe Nation, are they not scheming enough? Do they just have this, you know, these plans that they have, or is it just they all have their interest for their individual self?
You see, that is where the conversation comes in, and that is what one would say motivates some people from the Western region to align themselves with other presidential candidates from other regions, because they sit down and ask themselves that proximity to power in whatever capacity should be able to assist a community. And some of these people from Western region who are now, presenting themselves as options for the presidency are people who have either been in power or been very close to power. And the question in the minds of maybe those who might want to align themselves to other candidates, like maybe, let's say, Raila Odinga and other candidates for the seat, William Ruto, some of the conversations they have is they ask themselves that these years that you are in power, these years that you served as in this capacity as a cabinet secretary, as a deputy president, what were you able to lobby for that was to benefit the Luyas? If there were people who should have ushered the Luyas into the reality, or even if there were people who should have helped train the minds of the Mulembe nation as to the importance of power, it is these very same people who had positions previously but never did so, never made any major appointments to assist, the members of people from Western region, never really pursued any agenda or major agenda that you'd say, okay, fine, as a result of your leadership, we were able to advance as a community in these particular ways, yeah? Or even if they did, in the years that preceded that, they haven't done much that even the younger community or the younger generation would relate to, like a young person from Western region, a young person, and I'm just having a candid conversation, a conversation that any young person from the Western region would probably have. A young person who's going to vote for the first time or voting for the second time would ask themselves that, fine, you want us to vote for one of our own, and so what has he been able to do? What's that one project that I can associate with? What's that one development or track record that I can individually associate with and say, okay, fine, I might not have been a direct beneficiary, but I can see that you led us as a community in this particular light, And sometimes, people look for leaders that would inspire confidence in them. People look for leaders that would give them that feeling that, once you're in power, that, things will change. So I think these are some of the considerations that people make. These are some of the considerations that persons who might not necessarily believe in the Luya, in supporting one of our own might be thinking about. And also, I also ask myself the question of have they bargained enough? They haven't even started bargaining. They have not even started bargaining. In politics, you must always approach politics from the perception of, you must always approach politics from all possibilities. That what if I lose? What if I win? Always have scenarios for, in case as I am vying, if I do not win, what can I bargain for in the event that if I don't win, my people can benefit in 1 or 2, 3 ways, If what if I win, plan for winning and plan for losing, so that even if you lose, you still have some stake, you still have something to give back to your community, so that in the future, when you're now giving it a second chance, you're giving it a third attempt, people have the confidence that, for the few times that you even never made it to parliament, or you never made it to the various to the main office of presidency, you still bargained for something for our people. So right now we don't seem like we are in an active bargaining mode. Nobody has talked about any negotiation up until this weekend, which is a good thing. Let the conversations escalate. Let these people, in as much as they are saying we are the faction that supports the handshake, let them come to the point where, a neutrality point where they say, we are Luya leaders, we are key opinion leaders from the Western community, and we want to engage with all these leaders and find out what is it that you're going to deliver to our people. And maybe at that particular point, they might even be able to be convinced that, as opposed to supporting maybe Raila Odinga, let's now support one of our own, because he has been able to prove to us that given power, or he has convinced us that given an opportunity to lead, we will be able to benefit in these particular ways.
Yes, and they came out to talk of the handshake and say that this section of the leaders, and say that they rally behind the handshake and they support whatever Uhuru and Raila did. It's for them. Apart from handshake, what else would you say brought these leaders together really?
It's also positioning. When you look at it, most of the people who attended, or rather the key faces that attended the meeting that took place in Kakamega, A number of them are outgoing governors, people who are looking at themselves and wondering, what's my political future? You know, what's next for me? What's my backup plan? I always say that, and I think I also said it here the last time I came, that when you are sent to when you are on a negotiating table, whatever negotiating table you're on behalf of a group of people, the first person you negotiate for is yourself, you know. So of course, some of the things that motivate them to have such kinds of gatherings is they're asking themselves, what's in it for me as an individual, as an outgoing governor? What is in it for me? You know, because I will probably commit my resources towards your campaign. At the end of the day, where will you position me and my interests? Or how will you take care of my interests over and above the community interests? How will you take care of my interests? I mean, it's the same thing that is happening in central Kenya. Let nobody fool you that the leaders from Mount Kenya are purely sitting down and having all these continuous long, you know, all these subsequent meetings that they keep having. Let nobody fool you that 100% of the time they are negotiating on behalf of the community. Many of them are also asking themselves, you know, they're also positioning themselves for prime slots in government, for prime cabinet appointments, for prime businesses within once the faction that they support gets to government. So there is also individual interest that motivates these people to start having such conversations. In your views, what brings them together?
Let me retort to a few things that Ruth has brought out. You know, Ruth, this country has seen interesting times in the past, and I like using Mzee Kibaki as an example because is an interesting study. You know, Kibaki was in government from 1963. In between, he was Minister for Finance, one of the longest, I mean. He was Vice President for 10 years, and then Minister for Finance, Minister for Health, and eventually President. But I will tell you with certainty, and historical records are there, that the time Kibaki was Minister for Finance and Vice President, he did very little for Thaya, General Nyeri, because you know that those positions were beholden to the mercy and wishes of the CEO, the president. So you can't blame these leaders who are in office from Western for having done so little, because they were serving at the behest and call and beckon of the president. And you know how the system was. Yes, yes. You only do what you are told to do, and ends there. So, but you can see the difference, even among the Gemba community. Among themselves, the Kiambu people said that there's no way they can cede power to go beyond River Chania. But you see, when it got beyond River Chania, the difference it made to the region, central region per se, and the country. The man they derogatively called Major Kigwaya, you know, Kibaki was so derogatively referred. He was a man who was abused all the time. He's a coward, he's a drunkard, but the man revolutionized this country. So give everybody a chance. In that inertness that you perceive to be inability, there lies in strength. So I'm not saying that it is wrong for them to negotiate for their interests, but I wish they set among themselves and say, amongst us, mimi Oparanya, mimi Atuoli, mimi Msalia, Mugisa Kitui, who amongst us stand the best chance to be the next CEO of this country? Yeah. And there lies their strength. From that point, they say, Atuoli, I have several billions. Oparanya, in my tenure as governor, I've been able to amass this amount of wealth. I can contribute so much, you know. And then they come out with their son, and they tell Kenyans, this is how we'll negotiate. We have this, and we have these numbers behind us. What do you have to tell us? Yeah. Well, how many numbers do you have? As Luyas, we are 5 million voters. You Luos, you are 2 million voters. So between us and you, who should support the other?
Yes. And quickly before we take,
I wish power was that easy. You know, I wish he makes it sound like people are sitting somewhere on a round table and, you know, having that conversation without removing the voters from the entire conversation, you know, because when now you bring in the voters, because at the end of the day, it is the voter who decides, and the voter decides based on so many things. The voter does not look at might not necessarily look at where you come from, how many numbers do you have, or what's your voter basket strength. They look at you as an individual, you know, they assess you as an individual, not necessarily you as a community and where you come from. So I mean, if it was a question of we are sitting on a table, we have designated a few people within the country who determine where power should go, that would be a very easy conversation to have, you know.
I'd love to use both of you as my crystal ball.
Let me tell you, just before you, let me tell you, if her reasoning was the mantra which was used, Uhuru will not be president. You know, Uhuru lost. Uhuru tried to run in Gatundu, just Gatundu, and he was thrashed badly by a non-entity. He could not even go half the voter, the number of votes Honorable Moses Muya got. And you see where Uhuru was picked from, made ABCD. This thing is all schemed. It's not about just scheming. You decide it is this one, and you want to go away with, I mean, it's a product we can sell. Let us run with it. And that's how power is. Otherwise, mtangoja tu, after Raila, so you atakuwa ni Uhuru's brother, you'll again go there to bargain. After Uhuru's brother, it will be someone else, Gideon Moi. So Luyas will be going there as second rate, third rate.
Sindikiza.
Mtakuwa mna top up tu ya kura. Endeleni.
Okay, and I'd love to use both of you as my crystal ball. I mean, right now, there are just two horses in the race. That is what a lot of people have termed, you know, Ruto and Raila. And just in a few seconds or in a few words, what do you think are the chances? We'll go one by one for the candidates who are vying, you know, from the Mulembe nation. What are Musalia's chances, really, in a few words?
You know, I like being alive to reality. In this country, if the state is not backing you,
forget.
Your chances are very slim. So to the extent that the person with the state is backing Raila, I think his chances become real. To the extent that the state is not backing Ruto, I think he's just wasting his time. So
Dr. Mokisa Kitui has been awfully quiet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people who are excited when Mokisa Kitui entered the race. We became friends, and I was really hoping to see that he would, had he kickstarted his campaigns the moment he came back to the country and had his grand, not so grand entry back to the country, he would have probably been miles away. Like in terms of the discussion around which viable candidates from the Western region should be considered, he'd probably be ranking at number 2, or even, I mean, if he had put up a proper machinery, he would have been probably even considered as a top contender for the Western region, in terms of the Western region candidates. But I think he wasted a lot of time. He has not had a strategy that has positioned him well. Had he planned, because he had the goodwill. He actually, because at that point, we were at a point where Kenyans were saying, we want something fresh, we want something new. You know, there was a euphoria at that particular time where Kenyans were saying, can't we get some new blood? Someone who has not necessarily been in that space for, you know, trying to look, has never sought to become president at any particular point. So people were excited about his ideas. He seemed to be an intellectual. He seemed to understand the problems that affect Kenyans, very articulate on those issues. But he never came up with a structure to support his ambitions. And so, I mean, right now, Wetangula ranks higher than him, and if Atwoli was to say I'm getting into the race, Atwoli would also, you know.
Moses Wetangula.
Mokisa Kitui is just a Kenyan like others. He was a member of parliament in 1992 through to 97. I think he lost it in 2007. Yeah, he lost in 2007. 2013 he was the chief campaigner of Mulembe. So we know him. He's just a Kenyan like other Kenyans. We know him to the extent that he's not gained gravitas. That means that's where he belongs. That's his stature.
For my sake, I hope he doesn't watch this.
The first Kenyans you start with are Kenyans from home. I understudied his homecoming. It was a disaster. Nobody went there. School children were the ones there. So that was in his village. So charity begins at home, and the fact that the people at home have not seen any leadership capacity in him, that means the other Kenyans are just watching the pindi. So
Moses Wetangula.
Moses Wetangula is a force in his own right. To to the extent that he needs what he wants to be senator, you will not beat him. He remains that, and beyond that, I don't think there's anything else. So with the Senate, you always you give it to him. If you want someone to be an MP, then he decides, it will happen. So to the extent that he's a custodian of the Bukusu territory,
give him the respect that he deserves.
Okay, we take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we shall be talking about politics of empty promises, is it? So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Talk Point, and we are now getting into the politics of empty promises, where, you know, our leaders say this, they'll do this when they get into office, and do they do that? And that is exactly what we want to talk about, even as ODM party leader Raila Odinga has talked about the social welfare plan, where every household, a poor household, will be receiving about 6,000 Kenyan shillings per month, even as he plans to, you know, increase allocation to the Inua Jamii from about 37 billion shillings to 100 billion shillings. I mean, a lot of people have compared this to Uhuruto's government when they were getting into power, and how they talked about laptops and stadiums, we shall do this and that, but they have failed to do that. And now Raila talks of this social welfare plan of about 6,000 Kenyan shillings a month to every poor household, about 2 million of them. Is it practical?
Allow me to register my disgust at such statements, populist statements. First of all, say that Kenyans deserve much more and better than that. Kenyans are hardworking people. Kenyans are generally aggressive people, and they work hard. You know, in the last few years, there's been lots of bursary for this, bursary for that, bursary for that. If you're born a few years back, and you know that a lady who sold mboga, like my mother, just sold mboga and sold tomato, and was able to get me in one of the top schools in this country. That father enabled me to go to the university, and she didn't need to do bursary. I'm speaking from experience. We were able to pay fees, like should get enough money to pay fees right in the first term for the whole year. And the same school, my cubemate in the school was the Minister for Education's son, and we went to school, public school, with these people's children, and PSs and people like that. What has happened over the years is state capture. State capture by the individuals giving these promises, to an extent that these people are now richer for doing nothing. They have schemes, and they've set themselves in cabals that have ways of siphoning money from the state through procurement-driven contracts, you know, that are all geared to get money, and this is all corruption. So corruption in this country is at an alarming rate, because it is so sophisticated that you're told so and so is a billionaire, but this man does not do any known business. I don't want to mention names. Someone does not do. If you're told he owns this, unaenda unaangalia unaona haifanyi kazi, ilianguka. Unaambiwa enda restaurant na own is ilianguka. And see this man riding in choppers, doing this, you know, and all this points one thing, that there's corruption that drives this economy. This now is what has led the common man to be poor. We didn't build our country on the foundations of social welfare. No. And people did their little things at their own level, and they made money. Mama Mboga sold mboga. She made money. Mkokoteni rider did whatever he did. He made his own money that was able to take care of him, and he didn't. And we saw that. A few of us who were in this town earlier, Nairobi was such a Jericho here, and all these places. You know, people lived very well. They lived in their spaces, but they lived well. If you visited someone in Karen at that time, and you visited someone in, say for example, Pwani, California, when the table was set, you found the same meals, the same quality of meals, the same, you know, there were services. City council, the same city council that collects the garbage in California, the same city council that collects. So over the years, these spaces have been interfered with to create superior and very intricate complex networks of corruption. So it is this corruption that has created masses of poverty of poor people. So to an extent that people now seem to be to seek for favors. The things, stuff that should be their rights now come in as favors. That's why he has pronouncement that we'll borrow 6,000 shillings as monthly stipends to people who are able to work and generate more than 6,000. And there's dignity. Human beings want to live dignified lives. They want to live. When you talk about welfare state, if you've been wherever it is, there are people who are, because of certain certain disadvantages that occur to their families or the individuals, that's when they qualify to apply. They qualify to do what? To apply for those social welfare provisions within the state arrangements. Those arrangements are made to cushion certain individual who either fall sick and then become get unproductive because of health issues. Those who get accidents, they can no longer do what they used to do. So those things. But this is now a population that has been driven into poverty through stealing of state resources. In this country, we don't know who invented what to warrant him or her to be a billionaire. We don't know any Steve Jobs, any Michael Zuckerberg. It's called who? They invented the Mark Zuckerberg. We don't have the, or if there's one, you can tell me who invented something to warrant unroyalties to make them billionaires. So all these billionaires you see are the reason we have masses of poor people. Yeah. And as long as that obtains, we'll go from 6,000 to now we want to give them 20,000. And it will go deeper and deeper and deeper because we are not addressing the real problem. It is intricate corruption that drives power. All power games in this country are driven by corruption.
I mean, looking at our budget just for this financial year 2021-2022, we already have a deficit of about 940 billion shillings. But now Raila talks of 6,000 shillings a month to about 2 million households. I mean, can the government afford it?
One thing that we must always accept as a country is that the high budget deficits that we face each financial year are driven by the corruption that we face as a country. And he's rightfully put it, that we have been driven, our economy has been driven to where it is right now because of the massive corruption that we experience as a country. And so having identified that that is a problem, the automatic solution would be that if you were to cut out corruption, that if you were to successfully cut out corruption, even if it is to reduce the corruption that we face as a country by even half, by just half percentage, cut it into half, just decrease that corruption by half, we would be able to achieve so much as a country. We would be able to salvage so many resources that would go towards creation of job opportunities that we are complaining about, that would go towards even these social welfare programs that we now are looking at and thinking are very unnecessary, when in the real sense, to some extent, are also quite justified. Justified in what sense? When he started, he talked about how back in the days when, our mothers, with the very little that they had, they could still sustain families, they could still educate their kids, they could take their kids to all the way from primary school to even the university level with as menial as jobs as, not menial, but with the lowest of income, basically. Mama Mboga could be able to sustain their family, the entire family, and educate and provide food and sustain the family with the little that they had. But now we have to also be awake to the realities that, inflation is a real concept, that what the cost of living as it was back then, even minus corruption, the cost of living generally globally is on the rise. That even in other countries where corruption is not as prevalent as it is today, as it is in Kenya, that the cost of an item 10 years ago is not necessarily the same cost that it is today. That in that case, Mama Mboga who would sell a bunch of sukuma wiki for 20 shillings and afford to buy 6 household items can only buy one household item with the same 20 shillings that she will sell today. So we must be awake to the realities that the cost of living has definitely gone up, yeah? So the prices of things, the cost of education, you know, university education has gone up. Unlike in the past where the same Mama Mboga would take their kid to a campus and pay school fees of, I mean, less than 15,000 shillings, 10,000 shillings per semester. Today they have to pay accommodation in itself is more than the accommodation you had the other day that UN were complaining that accommodation has gone up 3 times the initial cost that it used to be. So the cost of living has gone up. We must appreciate that. And also, what we also have to also accept is that in as much as we talk about billionaires in this country and put all the blame on them and suggest that they are the reason why the economy is where it is today, we must also accept that there are people who've actually made genuine money out of genuine business, you know. So if we become a country that sells the mentality that you cannot become a billionaire by genuinely working hard and actually doing genuine business and getting to the point of being a billionaire, then what is the point of teaching hard work, you know, the value of hard work to our kids? Are we trying to tell our generation that in this country it is not possible for you to make it and become, you know, the top of the economic class and make your billions in a genuine way? So we must also accept that there are people who've made their money genuinely, and they're actually creating massive employment opportunities to Kenyans out there, you know. I might not be able to mention names, but I mean, I look at companies such as Keroche. I might not know the history behind how they have made it to where they are today, but I'm looking at it in terms of how many employees does Keroche, for instance, employ? How many young people are earning a living out of it? How many families are being sustained because of these billionaire businesses that we are now seriously you know, talking down against? So in terms of how practical it is, in my view, it is practical. Practical in what sense? If we are able to cut on spending, especially the spending, government spending, that the excessive government spending that we witness,
every ministry will have a
25%, yeah. If we are able to monitor these budgetary cuts, if we can be able to achieve that, if we can be able to fight corruption to the lowest levels that we can possibly, you know, deal with as a country, if we can be able to monitor our spending as a country, then I think some of these things are possible. Social welfare programs are things that are actually quite necessary, especially when you look at the most vulnerable within the community. What he's saying is that these programs are supposed to target the poorest of the poorest within the community, and we must accept that these people do exist. Go to the rural areas. I mean, 2 million Kenyans is just a fraction of our population. If that is the target group that the program is intended for, it is just a fraction of our population, because we are what, about 47 million Kenyans, and 2 million is just, you know, you're leaving out 45 million Kenyans who should be able to work for themselves. These are families that, for instance, you go to the Mashinani area and you have a woman maybe in her 50s, she's still in an age where she can work and take care of herself, but she's a widow with so many children, with so many responsibilities, to the extent that even if she has that business of selling boga that we are talking about that should sustain the family, it is not sufficient to sustain this entire family, you know. You are talking about maybe a young person who's finished university and has really looked for employment opportunities for such a long period of time, and they are now getting to a point where if they do not have something that can cushion them for the period of time that they are looking for employment, you know, something to even enable them look for that employment in the first place, they will find themselves in a situation where they commit suicide. And you know, the cases of suicide, you know, as it stands right now, already high. Cases of depression amongst young people because of lack of job opportunities are already high as we speak right now. So this, I mean, we cannot invalidate the importance of social welfare programs. Look at what this Pesa kwa Wazee has been able to do for the elderly within the Mashinani areas. Some of the elderly persons within Mashinani areas who are beneficiaries of this program are people who have either kids, they either have kids who do not, you know, care about their welfare whatsoever, or they have grown up in abject poverty for generations and generations, that their kids have also inherited the same poverty. The kids are not even in a position to support them, and as a result of these programs, they've been able to take care of their health. You know, they can afford to take themselves to hospital, they can afford to put a meal to the table, you know, at the end of the day. So I mean, yeah.
What is the status of that cash transfer to us?
Tell
us now.
In my view,
Just tell
from
us,
the experience
for
of
the last 2 years, what is the status?
I don't know what
No,
the
tell the
status
country.
is.
Tell the country.
Let me know. I don't know what the status is, but what I know is that my grandmother at home, who is one of the people who has signed up for that program, who rather qualifies for that program, was signed up for it, has been receiving her whatever dues.
Let me throw this one at you. Raila further talks about State Department and the Ministry of Youth that he plans to create and to have 4 positions of the Chief Administrative Secretary positions go to the youth. I mean, what difference will this ministry or this State Department he plans on bringing up? What difference is it from the State Department of Youth we have?
Let me ask you, Raila was Prime Minister a few years ago, and Kibaki appointed his side of government. He appointed, how many youth did he appoint? Were there no youths at that time, or the youths just
I mean, for me, what I'd say is I think that promise was overambitious, and sometimes some promises politicians make on podiums are meant to excite the crowds that are in attendance. The truth of the matter is that it would be quite ambitious to promise that you would give, at least 4 cabinet positions to the young people. It should be the ideal. I mean, the ideal should be that young people should find themselves in positions, in key decision-making positions. It would be a big win for us as young people if we were to get, 4 positions, 4 cabinet secretaries who are young people. That would be a great win for the young people. I mean, in terms of decision making, in terms of policy that is geared towards improving the lives of the young people, one would hope that if the youth were to hold such positions, then the lives of the young people would indirectly benefit from these appointments. But the truth of the matter is that, is it possible? Because is it feasible? Is it achievable? Because at the end of the day, we must accept that cabinet positions are positions that, those are the bargaining chips that people have. They're the bargaining chips that politicians hold to their chest. That is what they use to come to the table and allocate each other and say, because you are supporting me in this coalition, we will assign you 2 cabinet secretary appointments. And how many people, so far as you can see the intensity within which people are bargaining across the country, you can almost imagine that the positions have almost been exhausted in terms of, they have already been allocated. So right. The hope would be that, let's have 1 or 2 youth appointed, 2 young people appointed to cabinet would be a win for the youth. Youth ministry would be a win for the young people. But the thing is, the difference, and you're asking what would be different in terms of if a ministry was to be put in place, what would be the difference with the State Department for Youth right now? See, the difference that a ministry would come with would be the funding aspect of it. The other difference that it would come with would be the autonomy in terms of decision making. Like, you'd find a majority, I would assume that if it is a youth ministry, that a majority of directors who would be appointed within that ministry, a majority of persons who would be in charge of the ministry should be young people. And you see, a ministry gives you, there's some power that decisions that come from a ministry as opposed to a State Department hold.
Yeah. As we conclude, Mr. Oburu, are we trapped? Are Kenyans trapped in this politics of empty promises? Well, I'll do this for you. Get me into office. This is what I'll do. This is what I'll do. And as Ruth has said, it excites Kenyans. Are we trapped?
No, Kenya, like many other nations in Africa, suffer from state capture. And I don't see that ending soon. So it's the same forest.
Different monkeys.
Monkeys will just change skin and come at the same monkeys again. So it's a ping pong, it goes on, so don't expect any change.
No change at all.
I am optimistic. I am optimistic. I choose to be optimistic. I hope things change. I hope things change for the better.
Yeah, and this is where we wrap the Talk Point show tonight. Thank you very much for your company. My panelist for tonight has been Moses Oburu, a political analyst on my immediate right, and on my father's left, Ruth Ambogo, a political aspirant as well as a lawyer. Thank you very much for your insight on some of these important issues that are making conversations. Remember, every Friday from 9 p.m. we get to bring this show for you just to help you understand and make it make sense for you. So thank you very much for your company. See you next time. I'm Cynthia Nanjala.